is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
It's a relationships business more than it is a basketball business. You have to keep your people close, keep in contact with them, be a good person, do the right thing.
Nick Lorensen just completed his second season on the Salle University men's basketball staff as a graduate assistant under Fran Dunphy in year 1 and Darris Nichols in year 2. Lorensen previously spent time on the sidelines as a coaching intern at Queens University in North Carolina. Prior to his time at Queens, Lorensen had a focus on the media side of sports, with positions including scouting at the Portal Report, working as a communications and marketing intern for the Bowie BaySox, and working as a communications intern for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Give with Hoops is the first platform turning basketball analytics into fundraising impact. Every stat tells a story, and now every story drives sponsorship, engagement, and team growth. Programs nationwide are transforming basketball stats into funding power. Learn to use performance data to attract sponsors, engage fans, and raise more with every play. Give with Hoops will help you raise 3 times more money for your program as their stat-based pledges consistently outperform traditional fundraisers. Visit givewithhoops.com/hoop-heads-podcast to learn more and take your fundraising to the next level. Give with Hoops.
Hi, this is Ethan Stewart-Smith, head men's basketball coach at Washington and Jefferson College, and you're listening to the Hoop Heads podcast.
Are you or an athlete you know planning to go D3? Check out the D3 recruiting playbook from D3 Direct. Their playbook gives you a clear step-by-step roadmap to the recruiting process, what coaches value, key milestones from early high school through application season, and how to build a targeted list of schools that fit your needs. The playbook demystifies researching D3 programs and how to stand out without chasing every camp or showcase. The modules cover things like writing emails to coaches, building an effective highlight tape, using social media well, planning camps and visits, and navigating application strategy. You'll get templates, checklists, and an outreach plan to communicate confidently, learn how to compare financial packages, and avoid common missteps. By the end, you'll have a prioritized school list and a decision framework you can use to land your best fit opportunity. Click on the link in the show notes to get your D3 recruiting playbook from D3 Direct. Be sure to grab your notebook as you listen to this episode with Nick Lorensen, men's basketball graduate assistant at Salle University. Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Linsing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by Nick Lorensen, men's basketball graduate assistant coach at Salle University. Nick, welcome to the Hoop Heads pod.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Many people don't get my last name right on the first time. You did pretty good there.
All right, well, good. Cleansing mine, people mess mine up all the time. I always get an extra G in the middle of my name, so I'm usually Klingzing if people get it wrong. What do people do with yours? I'm kind of surprised. How do people butcher yours?
Lorenzen, or it's usually Zin, like the hefty lefty that played quarterback at Kentucky back in the day.
That's funny. It's hilarious because I look at it and I don't see that at all, but I guess you can see when people look at it quick. Yeah, we all know our own name, what the butcherings are that come at us. So I'm glad I got it right. That's always a key. As a podcaster, that's one of the things that when I get someone who's on as a guest who maybe I didn't know previously, and they do have a name that I'm not sure about, that's one of those questions that when you ask it, you feel a little bit bad, like, hey, how do I say your name? You feel a little bit, but it's much better to do that than it is to start the podcast and call somebody something that completely butchers their last name. So I'm glad I got it right without having to ask. So we're off to a good start. All right, Nick, let's start here with going back to when you were a kid. Tell me a little bit about your first experiences with the game of basketball. How'd you fall in love with it? How'd you get connected to the game? Who was kind of the driving force in introducing you to it?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, or like most kids, I guess, I played every sport. I was big into baseball. I still love baseball. I love college basketball. I love basketball, but I'd still probably say baseball is my number one. Anyone that's ever worked with me can say that I watch baseball nonstop. I know what's going on in the MLB. I know what's going on in the minors, all that jazz. Big football family as well. But my dad was going to go to Duquesne to play baseball. My grandfather was admissions director there. since 1979, that and student life. So he had season tickets. He loved Duquesne basketball. And that's kind of where I first fell in love with this thing. I'd go up for Thanksgiving. We'd go hit a Duquesne game that Wednesday before, or the Friday after. I'd fall in love with college basketball. And as time went on, I loved college basketball more and more. And I started playing basketball a little bit. I wasn't great at basketball. I didn't play in high school like everyone else. But I just fell in love with it. I started running social media accounts because I knew I'd be a little bit better at that in middle school and high school. Those did pretty well. And then I got lucky when I grew up in Catonsville, Maryland, where UMBC is. They beat Virginia, obviously, in the 2018 tournament, 16-1. And they pulled off that upset. UMBC didn't have an Instagram account. So instead of finding an account for them to tag, like the university or whatever, people were tagging me. So we had USA Today, ESPN, Steph Curry, Jay Williams, Fortnite, all these huge accounts at the time tagging me for these posts. And the athletic department didn't like it. They were like, why is this kid that goes down the street at a high school from us getting all this clout? We aren't getting anything on social media. Why don't we have an Instagram account? So they reached out and they were like, hey, can we buy that account off of you? And my mom's like, don't do it unless they give you an internship. So my last 2 years of high school at Catonsville High School, which is like right around the corner from UMBC, I asked if I could have an internship there, and I ended up working the athletic department for 2 years. And from there, I kind of got a little itch into writing. And this is kind of where my basketball coaching journey starts, because I'm writing for Mid-Major Madness for my senior year of high school, freshman year of college. And they always had pretty good presence on social media. And when it opened up my sophomore year, I reached out like, hey, can I run the social media account? Can I run the Twitter account? And it had about 20,000 followers. It was doing really well. A lot of people in college basketball knew what it was. And I took it over my sophomore year. I just gave it up this past fall, and I quadrupled the following, and it was just something I love. But I went to South Carolina. I'm going all over the map with this story. And heading into my senior year, I needed an internship to graduate with sports management at the university. And I always wanted to get into recruiting. I always wanted to get into college basketball. So I reached out to a couple people. I put out a tweet, and Grant Leonard at Queen's University sent me a text, and he's like, why didn't you just reach out to me? We talked a couple times before. I've been up there for a game. It was their second year at D1. And he's like, yeah, I want you here. I'll pay you a little. Come join our staff for a year. So I did that for a year, and then I ended up getting on at LaSalle. But not your normal journey of playing basketball, just loving it like that. I loved it from watching it with my grandfather and just watching it in this basement that I'm at home in Baltimore right now, just being a complete hoop sicko.
So it's funny just to hear that story, right, of the journey of how you got there. And I always relate this story from when I was playing, and there were guys who were student managers back when I played. Now, this is a long time ago, so we're talking 1988 to 1992. So a long time ago, the job market completely different. But I always tell people that when I looked at our student managers, I never once in the 4 years that I played college basketball thought that those guys were on a path to become coaches. I did not see that as a stepping stone to becoming a coach. I was always like, well, they must like hanging around the players and they just like doing the things that they do as a manager. I never looked at it as a career path to get into coaching. And then obviously now today you see so many guys who are not college players, but who are student managers, student assistants while they're still going to school. And then obviously they are spending way more time, at least on a personal like communication level, with the coaches on the staff. And so they're building those relationships, and then that enables them to be able to get into the profession. And now your story is a whole nother story in terms of the social media side of it, the media side of it, and then being able to take that and turn that into a coaching career. So I want to go through that kind of step by step, but let's work backwards and start with the social media side of it. How do you, as a high school kid, what's the process for you learning social media and taking it from the way that most teenagers use social media, which is I'm just using it to connect with my friends and see what other people are doing? How do you take it from that to I have a good enough understanding of how this works to be able to build some of the things that you built that got you that attention that you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, it's really all instilled into what my parents told me when I'm young. If you're going to do anything, go full in on it. I mean, I was consistent. Whenever anyone asked me about social media, I just say be consistent. College basketball is such a beautiful sport because every single night there's anywhere from like 20 to like 200 games going on. So you could really talk about anything and get any kind of audience on there. So in middle school, I did middle school and high school. I didn't focus on just, the high major programs, and I focused on mid major programs. And that ended up helping me in college because I focused solely on the mid major programs. And that's kind of where, if I'm in the hiring, I'm in the hiring cycle right now. The biggest things like, hey, this kid knows more about mid major and low major basketball than anyone else, because I sit there and I'll watch Cal State Fullerton against CSUN at midnight on a Thursday night, or I'll watch a SWAC basketball game on Monday night at 11 o'clock. People have walked into my apartment, walked in my office being like, what the hell is this kid doing watching Morgan State, South Carolina State at 4 o'clock on a Monday? It's just something I love. So it's really the key thing I've always told everyone is being consistent. Post about everything, especially the small programs. And I think that's what really helped me take off, because a lot of these programs don't get the shine that they deserve. Maybe they're in a bigger market with bigger teams and they're the third or fourth fiddle and they don't really get people that go to every single game. But you have someone else sitting there tweeting about you with somewhat of a following. It helps you out. It helps get you exposure and maybe build your program in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that you're right. When people think about college basketball, right, the average person thinks about the Power Five. They think about the teams that are top seeds in the NCAA tournament. And yet you look at not just at the Division I level where you have the mid majors and low majors, but then you think about Division II, Division III, just the number of schools that are out there that are playing college basketball that could benefit from what you're describing, right? Of somebody that's just putting it out in front of people for them to see it. So when you're sitting there and you're watching those games, right? At some point, were you thinking about watching those games initially just as a fan, like, hey, I just enjoy watching college basketball, watching these games? And then at some point, obviously, as you start thinking about, hey, maybe I'm going to get into coaching, does your focus shift in how you watch the games from when you first started, obviously, to when you start thinking about getting into coaching? What's the difference in how you watch the games 5 years ago versus how you watch games today?
Yeah, 5 years ago, just watching it as a fan, just tweeting out great plays, all that jazz. And I'll never forget, about a month into my time at Queens, Grant Leonard's like, now that you're watching all these games, do you watch them differently? Like, yeah, I mean, I'm watching them, I'm catching out plays, and it's even more different than 2 years ago. Now with the transfer portal being such a big thing, I watch these games and I put together a list. Hey, this kid's pretty intriguing. Maybe he's not putting up great numbers. Maybe we can get him out of LaSalle. Um, yeah, it changes every single year. And I don't know if that's the beautiful thing about college basketball right now, or something that's bad about college basketball. But with all these different games, you're able to pick up something different every single time. And like watch St. Mary's when Randy Bennett was there. You just love watching all their offensive sets. You watch a school like Belmont, you're like, at LaSalle, we can't get any of these guys, but they have 8 dudes that are potentially high major players. It's just, there's so many different things you can pick up from so many different programs, and it's really grown, like you mentioned, through these past 5 years, because now I feel like I have more of a basketball acumen than I had then, because I've been around people that love the game, that have learned the game, that are growing in the game as well as I am.
Was there a light bulb moment for you when you're doing your media stuff, when you're doing your writing, where it clicked for you and you're like, hey, I want to get into coaching? Or was it more of sort of a gradual lead up to it seemed like the next step in the progression? Was it a moment or was it a gradual build to get into coaching?
I think it was gradual, because I don't really know if the way of media right now is going in the right direction. Like, I don't know how much longer there'll be beat writers at most of these games. At high majors, yes, there will. But when you look at the mid-major programs, there's not many of them. But I've always been interested in this side. Like, my grandfather, I mentioned, was director of admissions and student life at Duquesne. So he was big into recruiting kids into campus. And that's always been something that I've wanted to do, recruit kids into a campus. And you get to do it in a smaller scale. With college basketball, you only have 17 spots, 15 spots, 17 spots that you can use to fill up a roster. So I've always been interested in that side. High academics, recruiting kids into a campus to further their life. But it was more gradual because I could see the media stuff wasn't going to work out for all too long. Like, I'm really blessed. I've gotten to work. I even did it this year. I've done, I believe, 4 straight Final Fours. The first 3 I was sat right at half court, perfect seat. I'm blessed with the media stuff, and it was just a gradual climb.
Tell me about the relationship with Grant Leonard. How do you first meet him, and how does that relationship develop to the point where he invites you to come on and be a part of his staff?
Yeah, so, and I believe I started doing it my junior year of college. I'd have these Twitter meets or whatever they're called, where you have like all the people on there and you talk to them and you interview them. But I did one for every single league for a couple of years, and I did one for the A-Sun, and it was their first year heading into D1. I'm like, I should reach out to Grant Leonard. I should give him a little exposure about the program. We had a great 30-minute conversation. And I had a co-host on there. I don't remember exactly who it was, but we were talking about how well of a first season they were going to have. I don't know if G wants me to really share this, but it was like, I'm like, I think they'll have more than 8 wins, and the other guy's like, I think they'll have less than 8 wins. And he texted me right after because he was still listening. He's like, do you want to make a little side bet on this? If we have more than 8 wins in conference play, it might have been like 18 wins total or something like that. You owe me lunch at the Final Four. If we have less, I'll owe you lunch. And they ended up having more than that. So we ended up having lunch at the Final Four. But throughout that whole year, we talked. I came up to a game, saw them play FGCU. Had a nice little clip about Dan Bailey, who should be a great coach in this business. He's been at Queens ever since they moved to D1. He's the all-time leading rebounder at Queens. Hopefully next in line to be the head coach at Queens University. But we just kept talking and talking and talking. Then I reached out to a couple people that offseason about getting an internship. And I put out a tweet one day. I'll never forget. I was in Safeway with my mom, and he shoots me a text. He's like, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? I'm like, I didn't really think about it. He's like, I would love to have you at Queens. I'm like, well, that works because I could come up. I was only planning on doing it the second half of the year because I still had to take classes the first half of the year. Charlotte's only about an hour and a half away from Columbia, South Carolina. I'd be able to be there all year, go to all the games. He paid me pretty nicely. I had a pretty nice role because I knew that he knew what I can bring to the table. So I ended up accepting that. And for the first half of the year, I was taking 6 classes, coming up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And for the second half of the year, I was coming up every single day. So it was about 3-4 hours on the road every single day, driving up from Columbia, South Carolina to Charlotte to be there with them. And I think that really stuck with him, just that commitment to come up every single day, be the best I could. And even at LaSalle, he helped me get the job. He called him and he's like, this kid's just different. He commuted every single day. He came up 3-4 hours. He just always says good things. Like whenever he goes on a podcast and someone mentions me, he calls me bloated contract. But G's great. I'm so happy they had a great year this year. He got to shine with all the sweaters that during the Auburn game and during the NCAA tournament. But that's a program on the rise. They did a great job this year. They've done a great job the last couple of years. They're averaging 18 wins per season in these first 4 years. You don't get that much for these transition programs. Them and like St. Thomas. He's doing a great job. I'm super proud of him. I'm super proud of the program. And I'm really happy that I got to work there for a year. I'm super blessed to know Grant.
I love hearing the glamorous side of college basketball coaching. I always crack up again, right? That like people, again, on the outside of the profession, look at college basketball coaching and they look at it through the same lens that we talked about a minute ago, right? It's Power Five. It's the people at the very top making millions of dollars, and everybody says, "Wow, college basketball coaching." Everybody's making so much money, and it's such a glamorous job. And then I think about the story that most people have, which is something again similar to yours, right? Here's this job that I got to commute 3 or 4 hours every single day to show up and be paid probably what was enough to maybe pay for your gas, and
Yeah.
maybe you could eat one sandwich a day on
Cookout.
what you were being paid. And yet, because of the passion that people have for the game of basketball and for the coaching profession, that's what you have to do, because so many people want to get into it. And if you love it, that's what you're willing to do in order to get there. And I always, again, kind of laugh at, again, just the idea that everybody gets this golden platter of it goes from here to here to here. I'm a player, then I'm a high level assistant. All of a sudden I'm coaching at Michigan State or wherever it is. Those stories don't happen. Your story is a much more common one of, you have to fight for everything that you get in this profession. You have to be willing to go wherever it is that the job is. You have to be willing to work for nothing or next to nothing. And even then, you got to work really, really hard and do a really good job in where you are in order to be able to advance in your career. And I think there's a lot of great lessons for young coaches in that story that you just shared with me. So to piggyback kind of off where you left it and the relationship that you have with Coach Leonard, when you get in there for the first time and you get behind the scenes, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? You've kind of seen college basketball from the outside. Now you're kind of seeing it from the inside of a coaching staff. What was something that was exactly what you expected, and what was something that was different from what you expected? Nick, hold on one second. I just want to make sure, because I know my thing popped up that you got a phone call, which that happens sometimes, but I want to make sure, because it's showing me that your upload is complete, which means that you may not be recording. So what I want to do is, I'm just going to have you leave I think if you leave the link, like go out and then come back in, and then you'll be able to re-record. We'll start you recording again. And that way we don't miss anything. I think we'd probably still be okay, but I don't want to take a chance of recording a bunch of stuff and then having you disappear. And the nice part is, the software for this stuff works beautiful, so nobody will be any wiser. So if you just leave and then use the same link to come back in, and we'll just keep recording. But I'd hate to have us go and then all of a sudden we get to the end and we only have the first 20 minutes. Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
That happens. Like, I honestly, like, it's funny because I've had times where I retired in October, but when I was teaching, I would sometimes have to, because thank you. It's a good feeling. When I was at school, sometimes my school internet wouldn't allow me to get on. Sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't. So sometimes I had to use my phone, and then it would always be annoying because I'd do it and then I'd get a phone call and the same thing would happen. I'd be like, oh man, obviously you can't control incoming phone calls. So it is what it is. So why don't we I'll just have you pick up with the same question kind of again. What behind the scenes, what was what you expected? What was maybe something that was surprising that you didn't realize before you kind of got behind the scenes?
Yeah, just how hard everyone worked. Seeing it from a media side, sometimes you hear staffs are never in the office. Sometimes you hear staffs are in the office a whole bunch. But then I went to Queens, and there were people in there from 8, 9 a.m. until 6, 7 p.m. every night, just grinding film, or they're in the gym working out a guy who's just consistent and nonstop. And I didn't really know what I was going to get into when I went there. I remember being so nervous, meeting everyone. First practice, I'm like, all right, this is a little bit more my wheelhouse. Like, I've been to practices before. Like, I know how this goes. Like this makes sense. But just seeing how hard everyone worked, and then everyone always says, I don't want to toot my own horn that I'm a hard worker, but watching these people, I'm like, I gotta work really, really hard if I want to be anything in this. And I take a lot of it from Sean McClurg, who's now at West Virginia, and he's doing all their scouting stuff. Like, he'd watch 6 games before every time we played to the other team, and he would write so many notes. And I'd watch 2, 3 games, and I'd give him some notes, and he's like, "You'll get on my level someday." And over time, I finally got there where like I'm watching that much and I'm getting that much out of all of it. Charlie Wilson, who's an assistant at Central Missouri, was in there at 8, 9 a.m. doing the same exact thing. One guy did the offense, one guy did the defense. They would just be in there nonstop trying to get any little thing that they could get out of film. And I that was my biggest thing I've picked up on, and I've continued to try to work off of that ever since I've seen that on my first day and throughout that whole first year at Queen's University.
I think the film piece of it is something that for people on the outside, again, I don't think they realize what the ability to learn from film. And when you're just sitting down and learning how to watch film, number one, and learning what to watch for, what to look for. And then secondly, I think when you're sitting down, right, and you're going through and you're looking at tape of players that you're maybe interested in recruiting, or when you're looking at a player, when you're looking at teams, right, and you're scouting the opponent, but not only are you picking up things that are helpful to your team in terms of preparing for them as an opponent, but you're also picking up things like, oh, I really like what that coach is doing here with this particular action, or oh, here's how they do this particular thing with their defense on switches, or whatever it might be. And so you just kind of keep picking up and putting things into your mental database of, hey, my knowledge of the game and the X's and O's is growing. Because watching the game as a fan on TV, or even watching film if you're not coaching a particular team, completely different. So many people, I think players especially, right, have no idea how to watch film. They just don't. Everybody, if you're a player, you're probably watching yourself and you're not watching much of anything else that's going on, right? And so I think the learning curve of being able to watch film and being able to sit down and actually have somebody work through it with you, I think is invaluable. If you had to point to one person on that initial staff that kind of helped you work through that idea of studying the film from a coaching perspective, who would you say that person would be, and how did they help you?
Yeah, it was Sean McClurg, who's on West Virginia staff now, does a lot of their scouting because he'd watch every single game. I'd give him some personnel notes, but he would build off of that. He would watch the 6 games. I think he had the offense of the other team, so he'd have to pick out sets, and it'd be long film sessions. I don't know if I want to get that long, but I built off of that. And like we mentioned a little bit earlier about how I watch games differently now, more than different 5 years ago. Um, I just pick up teams that I watch every single night. Like I watch St. Thomas every single time they play. I have the Midco SN deal. I have every single streaming deal that you can ever think of because I'm that much of a hoop sicko. I have Flow Sports, I have Midco, I have ESPN Plus. But I love watching St. Thomas. Johnny Tower is an outstanding coach. He's done an outstanding job there. They moved from D3 to D1, and they're winning 20 games every year. That doesn't happen. That's never happened. But I want to give Johnny Towers flowers and Sean McClurg. Just he does an amazing job with all the video stuff, and it showed at North Texas in his 1 year there, and through 1 year at West Virginia. They had a really good first year under Ross Hodge and Morgantown.
How long did it take you after taking that position at Queens to know that you had found the right place? And what did you love about the coaching part of it right away? What was it about the coaching that you were like, oh yeah, I'm in the right spot? And how long did it take for you to realize that you were?
So let's see. I probably got in like 8, 9 o'clock, and we had practice probably at 2 o'clock. So probably between that, because we got in there and G was just himself, yelling at the players, teaching basketball. It was just an environment that I love to be in. Everyone knows that you're there to help. There's very little toxicity, especially early on in the season, where the hopes are high. You think that you're going to have a great season. I just love being around basketball and being able to see the behind the scenes work and everyone being so open and free and telling their opinions. I'll tell you whatever comes to my mind. I'm not going to hold back. And that just meant a lot. I remember early on, we have boot camp at Queens, so it'd be sprints. You pretty much just run sprints for 2 weeks straight. You start, I believe, the first practice was maybe 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. Every single morning. It got like 8 minutes earlier. So by the end of it all, we started at 4 a.m. I want to say 3, 4, 5 a.m. on a Friday. And I remember I drove back to Columbia the night before, and it was 4 a.m. I'm not going to bed because it's going to take 2 hours to get there. I'm going to leave at like 1:30, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock to get there. And that was just, I mean, just the grind that those 2 weeks were really helped put the team together and really helped me figure out even more than that first day, like, hey, we're in this together. We all love basketball. We want the best for each other. Like this is worth it. And then it continues on. Like second scrimmage, our first scrimmage went awesome. We played VMI. We beat them by like 60. That rocked. And then we went to Charleston. I've always loved Cougars basketball. Like that was probably the biggest team that I covered my first 2 years in Mid-Major Madness because they were top 25. I could see them when I was back home in Baltimore. I could see them down in South Carolina. And this Pat Kelsey did an outstanding job there. But we went there and we beat them. And Rain, I forget his last name, but he was a shooter. He went to Louisville, Australian. It was his birthday. It was the day after his birthday. He didn't score a single point against us. And we ended up going into Charleston and beating him. I'm like, this rocks. I think we'll be pretty good. Like this is fun. I love college basketball, and I love being at this part where we can enjoy and celebrate, even though it was a scrimmage win against the Charleston program that's been outstanding, and they were top 25 the year before, and they lost a couple guys. Like this still means something to someone.
Absolutely. I always think back when you talk about that to John Schulman, who's at the University of Central Arkansas now. And I remember the first time that I talked to Schulman on the podcast, one of the things that he said in that interview was just, you got to make where you are the big time, right? That where you are has to be big time. And at the same time, you have to also realize, in keeping it in perspective, that at the time he was at the Macaulay School in Tennessee, and he said, we have our big rivalry game, and here we're playing, and he goes, "Have you ever heard of our school?" I'm like, "No, not really." He's like, "Do you care at all?" He's like, "Do you care at all about whatever our big rivalry game?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, that's kind of what I have to hold those two things kind of in opposition, right? That this has to be the biggest thing that we're doing, regardless of where we're at. And at the same time, you have to keep it in perspective that there are, again, you got to move on, win, lose, whatever. It's got to be about more than just those wins and losses."
Yep.
And when you do that and you can keep those two things in perspective, then you're probably in a healthy position as a coach. And I think that is really a good way to look at it, that wherever you're at, man, you can make it the big time, and it has to matter to you. And I think that's kind of the point that, that you're getting there when you get excited about, hey man, these first two scrimmages, and man, I'm in the business, and this is awesome. And I love it. And I think that something else that goes along with that, which you kind of hinted at a little bit, it was talking about the players, right? And being out on the floor and getting to, hey, between 9 a.m. and then that first practice when we're getting out on the court. Tell me a little bit about the relationship that you've been able to build over the couple of years that you've been in college basketball with players. Obviously, as a young guy, you're close in age to the players that you're coaching, which has some positives and potentially has some drawbacks when you look at how you build that relationship. And you said something that really struck me, which is the players want to get better, right? And they know that you want them to get better and that you're able to help them. Then they're going to respect you, and they're going to know that, hey, this guy's on our side. So just talk a little bit about, from your perspective, building relationships with the players on your team, both at Queens and then at LaSalle as well.
Yeah, I'm super blessed, and I think in my role, like I don't have to be as hard on them as other people, which really helps me out. It's going through my 3 years. I've probably talked to pretty much every single one of them at least once every 3 months. And that's something you got to keep these. It's a relationships business more than it is a basketball business. You have to keep your people close, keep in contact with them, be a good person, do the right thing. But yeah, I've been super blessed to have a really good relationship dating back to Queens. Dayton Albury, who just finished his last season at New Mexico, he left me a ticket during the Final Four for the NIT Final Four. They were playing against Tulsa, so I went there. Jordan Neville, who was our walk-on that year, he called me a couple weeks ago about his recruitment. He was at Garden City shooting 40% from three. And then at Queens, or then at LaSalle, like I still talk to pretty much everyone from that first team. Still talk. Obviously, I've been around everyone from the second team because they're still there. But like, it's really easy to get across these guys because I have a good relationship with them. The story that I always think about is we were at Duquesne this past year in February, and Eric Acker was on both LaSalle teams. He was the only guy to be on both LaSalle teams under Fran Dunphy, under Darris Nichols, and we started a really rocky relationship. One day I was class checking. He was going to be late for class, and he's like, either I'm going to be late for class or pick up my food from the union. And I went and I picked up his food from the union, and the director of ops, Mike Doyle, who hired me, just got the head gig at Delaware Valley. Super proud, super happy for him. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm class checking. I'm picking up EA's food right now. He's like, picking up his food? You're not supposed to, don't do that. That's not in your job title. You're not doing that. I'm like, okay. So I have to text Eric. I'm like, Mike called me. I can't pick up your food. And then I go down to the locker room later and he gets real heated with me. But ever since that moment, we've gotten really, really, really tight. He's going to Northern Kentucky now. I think he's going to do really well under Darren Horn, play that zone, shoot the three ball. But he was going through a patch this year where he was really struggling. He didn't play much early in non-conference. And we're playing Duquesne late February. And we're down to like 7 players. So injuries, he needs to come in. He needs to make some big shots. And I could just see out there like he wasn't himself. Like he was pissed off. He didn't want to play basketball. And Shane Nichols, our associate head coach, is like, I don't like how EA looks right now. So I pull him aside when we get up from the huddle, just smack him in the butt. I'm like, have fun. Go out there, have fun. And he scores 7 points just like this. And one was a steal, dunk. Duquesne called a timeout. We ended up going up 5 late in the game. And I don't think that would have happened if I didn't have that relationship with him. So having real relationships and being close with every single guy on your roster really means something. If you want to get all that you can out of them, I'd say get close with them. Don't just make it a business relationship. EA and I, we go back and forth. We send TikToks. We send Instagram reels back and forth. That's just the way of the world right now. You gotta show the love on social media as well as in person. So relationships are key in this business, and that's not just with the players, but that's when it comes to getting coaching jobs as well and staying in coaching, because that's the only way that you're going to grow or move up in this business is by being good to good people.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's one that we've hit on numerous times on the pod. And when I think about that, I think about being where your feet are and doing the best job that you can at the job that you're in right now. Because so often I think you see or hear of people kind of moving up the career ladder in coaching, and the only way that you can do that is by doing exactly what you said, which is building relationships with the people that you get a chance to interact with, which is mainly the people right on your staff that are seeing you every day. If you're not the kind of guy that somebody would want around, right, they're not going to recommend you to anybody else and then have somebody come back and say, hey, why'd you recommend Mike to us? The guy doesn't work hard and he doesn't do this. Versus if you are in your job, whatever that role is, whatever it is that you need to do on a day-to-day basis, if you're doing it to the best of your ability, right? It's just like a player, star in your role. You might be the 9th guy on a team and only play 5 minutes a game, but can you maximize that 5 minutes? And on a staff, your job might be to pick up lunch for the other coaches, or your job might be to make sure all the balls are inflated, or your job might be to follow up with recruits and send them a social media clip, or whatever it is. If you do that to the best of your ability, it gives you an opportunity to get your next chance because somebody's going to vouch for you. And I think that you make a really good point there when it comes to that. And so let's extend that to the opportunity from Queens to LaSalle. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but just go into a little bit more detail of how the opportunity to move from Queens to LaSalle, how does that come to you?
Yeah, once again, social media. Everyone always talks about how bad social media is, but it's been really, really good to me. I was talking to a couple schools, and then I saw a post on social media from Mike Doyle like, hey, we need graduate assistants at LaSalle. I'm like, this would be pretty nice. I've always loved the A10. I'm a Duquesne family. It's close to home. It's only about 2 hours away from where I grew up in Baltimore. Like, this would be a really, really nice setup. So I sent my resume, and I heard back a couple days later, and we hopped on the phone. And I made, I guess, a really good impression. I remember talking about, he went to Cabrini. Rest in peace, Cabrini. Really good school, really good basketball school. Marcus Kahn, who just won the national championship at Mary Washington, was their head coach there before they got bought by Villanova. But he played there, really good player. And I remember just talking on the phone about Cabrini because one of my best friends from South Carolina grew up right around the corner from there. And I talk about the Chipotle that he went to when he went to college. And we were going back and forth for 10, 15 minutes, hung up. And then the next day, John Cox, who is now the head coach at Germantown Academy in Philadelphia, he was a really good player, played at San Francisco in their Hall of Fame. Cousin of Kobe Bryant, only male cousin of Kobe Bryant, called me. He's like, we're going to hire you. Mikey's going to call you in a couple days. Like, we were really, really impressed. And I went up there, and I got there in June. It was long. It was very long days when I first started because we were getting a new gym. They were redoing the gym. So get there at 7 a.m. It wouldn't be done usually until 9 p.m. But a lot of that time you're not doing much because it's the summer. So you're just sitting around for 14 hours a day around Fran Dunphy and all these guys. And you're really picking up on a lot. But it was the power of social media. Grant Leonard, back to that, mentioned it a little bit earlier, called Mike and put in a really good word for me, which really helped. Just the power of these relationships that you build in the business. He wanted what was best for me. I remember leaving the office, and I'd go back to him in a heartbeat. But he's like, "You're going to be great. Like, I know that you're going to do a lot. You're going to really move up this ladder really quick. I'd love to have you back, but I know that you'd be able to be like really impactful for a staff like LaSalle in a league like the Atlantic 10." But power of social media, it gets a lot of hit, but it's really helped me a lot in my career.
It's kind of crazy when you think about just the connections that social media is able to build and the way that you can get immediately connected to somebody that maybe you don't have a connection with prior, and a simple interaction via social media makes those things happen. And in a roundabout way, that's how you and I have been connected. So I randomly reached out to George Michalowski from the Portal Report on Twitter. He responds to me, comes on, he recommends, hey, you should talk to Nick. And now here we are, having no previous connection, but through the magic of social media, here we are sitting together doing a podcast. And I just think that in so many ways it works. I'll never forget, Nick, and this is a funny story from my experience with the podcast. I had Dwayne Killings on, who's at Albany when he was at Marquette, and had Dwayne on and did an episode with him. And then later when he got the Albany job, I had him back on, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to say thanks because my appearance on your podcast helped me to get the head coaching job at Albany, because my AD here at Albany listened to the episode and felt like he got a feel for the kind of person that I was. And that kind of cemented the idea that they were going to hire me. I'm like, Dwayne, I think you're giving me a little too much credit maybe here. I think you're overselling how much of an influence the podcast may or may not have had, but I appreciate the sentiment. And I'm sure that his AD did listen to it. But again, it's just what we can do with technology from that standpoint of connecting. And as you said, there's obviously pluses and minuses, and there's all different ways that it can be used for good and for negative. But for the most part, if you utilize it in the right way, the ability to connect with people, that there's really nothing like it that can take you from no relationship to a relationship where you and I are going to sit down now for an hour and a half and be connected, hopefully for a long time after this.
Pretty much every relationship I have in college basketball, outside of the ones that have grown at LaSalle and Queens, have been over social media. Like, I'm blessed to, I probably have 10, 15 sitting head coaches that I text regularly every week, and that wouldn't have happened without the power of social media, because none of those guys from Queens or LaSalle become head coaches at other places. So yeah, I mean, it's always talked about the negatives, but in a business like college basketball, Twitter is key. If you want to get into coaching, you don't have a Twitter, I don't know what you're doing, because that's really where all relationships start in college basketball.
There's no doubt about that. When you look at from a coaching standpoint, just the community that's been built on Twitter with the basketball community, I think is stronger there, obviously, than anywhere else. And you can certainly reach out and get connected to almost anybody through that, right? When you think about either directly or connecting with somebody who's then connected to someone else, and it allows you to have those relationships. Talk to me a little bit about going to LaSalle and just Philadelphia basketball, which anybody that I've ever talked to that's coached at one of the Philadelphia schools just talks about how special, right? The Big Five and the Palestra and just everything that goes along with the history of the city of Philadelphia. So just talk a little bit about how that kind of influences you personally, but you guys as a staff, and how that can be a selling point for the program and a strength, and just again to be able to tap into the talent that's there in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, first coming from South Carolina to LaSalle, those couldn't be two opposite ends of the spectrum in location and everything. So I had no idea what I was getting into when I went to LaSalle. It's gritty. It's about as gritty of a college campus as you can get in the top 7 conferences in college basketball. So, I go there. I know the Big Five's awesome. I've been to the Palestra a couple times. I know Fran Dunphy is the winningest coach in Big Five basketball history. He's the man. He's the one you want to be around if you want to work in Philly basketball or just college basketball in general. And I remember being super excited for the first Big Five game. We played Drexel at Drexel. My parents came up from Baltimore, and we ended up winning. And we went, I think, to 5-0 on the year, and that was cool. And then we went to Daytona Beach and had a little stumble. But then Temple came into town, and Don Fadden beat Temple since he left Temple in a couple years prior. He'd been at LaSalle. This was probably, I think it was his 4th year. And you could just tell the game meant a lot for a lot of people. Trey Lowe, our player development guy, played at Temple. Jaleel White, our starting forward, played 4 years at Temple and transferred to LaSalle. This game meant a lot for a lot of people. And by the time it was tip-off, that whole entire Glacier Arena at LaSalle was either cherry and white or yellow and blue. Our student section was going at after everyone's necks. And you could just tell the game meant more. You could tell that at Drexel, but you could tell that even more when Temple and LaSalle played 5 miles apart from each other, the 2 North Philly schools. Like, this meant something. I hate Temple. It's up there with Clemson with me. Like, I can't stand that school. I don't know. I'd understand why people go to Clemson. My buddies from South Carolina would be like, why would you say that, Nick? But I can understand why people go to school at Clemson. I don't understand it with Temple. But we play that game and we win, and just everyone on social media going crazy, everyone in the crowd, that game was talked about for the next month about how we beat Temple. And then we go to the Big Five Classic Championship because we beat Drexel and we beat Temple, and it's a whole week around. We didn't play anyone else the week before. It's just a whole week around, hey, we're playing St. Joe's at least 3 times this year. We hate St. Joe's. I can't stand anything that happens at St. Joe's. Joe Mihalik played at LaSalle. He can't stand St. Joe's. He brings it up every 5 minutes that week leading up to the game. And we go there, and we're playing at Wells Fargo Arena. There's 2 games before us. Temple, Villanova right before us, obviously the 2 big schools in the city, so they're going to draw a little bit of a crowd. But then we play, and that whole NBA arena is filled for 2 A-10 teams playing on a Saturday in December. Just shows how special the city is when it comes to college basketball. And, Dunph made it always super important. This is another championship you can win. You can hang up a banner for winning a Big Five title. Many teams aren't able to do that. You don't hang up banners for winning MTEs. You hang up titles. Or you hang up banners for winning the title of the best school in Philadelphia that year. We fell short, but it was an awesome environment, and it's just different. Like, that whole team, most of that team were from the area, so they understood how important it was. There's a lot of returners, so over the summer they'd go and they'd pick up a pen. So they knew these guys from playing at the Palestra throughout the summer, throughout the fall, getting their runs in. And it made it different. Like going into this year, I'm telling these guys, like, these games are just different. Like, I hate Temple. Like, I know we're 2-0, but this game is going to mean something to Adam Fisher. Adam Fisher's been around the block. He just lost us last year. Like, they're going to come in with a vengeance. They have a couple dudes returning. And we end up losing by 30-40. And over time, they started to figure out, like, hey, like, this is the real deal. We went from playing in the championship game to playing in the fifth place game at Wells Fargo this year where we beat Drexel. And just, I think that was our best all out performance because they realized how important it was. Our best time in the locker room. We enjoyed ourselves. We had such a blast just celebrating it. And it was something that we talked about the rest of the year, our 1-3-1 zone against Drexel, about how much we put their mind into a pretzel. But those wins in Philly just mean so much more. We played 3 games at the Palestra this year. I'd obviously been there to cover games before. I went to the first Ivy League championship, tournament championship with my mom back in high school. Like, those were special environments, just walking around, walking onto the court, walking around the concourse. But being there, being able to be on the court 3 days straight just meant more. And then this year I also went to the Catholic League Championship, sat up in the corner with Fran Dunphy, and that whole place is packed. You got the 2 student sections going back and forth. There's not a better championship in high school basketball in the country, in my opinion, because you have that small gym. It's really loud in big moments. All the Catholic League schools, they hate each other. It just means more. Philly basketball is a different breed. Like, I love Baltimore basketball. I love DMV basketball. I've always brought up about how great it is. All these schools in the area, they need to play each other. Like, it's a really, really, really good scene. But nothing in the world, maybe like European soccer, is the only thing higher than Big Five basketball, in my opinion.
I think what always strikes me about that is when you have the interconnectedness, and I think you can take this to any league, you can take it to the high school level. When you have schools and players on those teams that know each other outside of the relationship on their college team or outside of their high school team, when those kids see each other in the summertime, when they play pickup with each other all year round, and then those teams step on the floor against one another in the regular season or in a tournament setting or whatever it is, yeah, that stuff means way, way more when you're playing against somebody that it's personal. It's not just, hey, we're playing against Temple. It's, and I got to look at this dude all year round, play him in pickup games. Yeah, that game becomes a lot more important. And I think that's something that, again, you can't, if you're not in it, I don't think you can understand it. I really don't.
That's any rivalry. In the world of net rankings, everyone wants to get their metrics up and get in the NCAA tournament and have the best net number possible. But, like, I've been putting together all these mixtapes for George, and, I'm watching, like, Belmont Lipscomb. Like, that game still means a lot. The Battle of the Boulevard still means a lot to the city of Nashville because those schools are literally right next to each other. They see each other every single day. You're not going to get the same. Duke, Arizona, I know they're top 10 in the country. They probably played a lot of AAU together, but you're not going to get the same as a Duke and NC Central. I know that the game might be a 70-point blowout, but the schools are 10 miles or so apart from each other in the same exact city. Like, it means something. Like, these are people you're going to be able to brag about. Like, say NC Central is able to pull off the upset. Coppin State pulled off an upset against Maryland in 1980, and they talk about it still.
I'm sure. Absolutely. There is no doubt about that. That is something that you will carry with you for the rest of your life as a win in a rivalry game. I could think of games in high school that played against guys that played with me on teams in the summertime that I played against all the time. And yeah, if you win those games, bragging rights for life. I'm 56 years old, and there's still a guy or two that if I saw him, I'd still probably remind about, hey, you remember that game in 1988 when such and such happened? Yeah, it means a lot more when you know the people that you're playing against, without a doubt. I want to ask you a little bit about Coach Dunphy. You've mentioned him a couple of times, and obviously getting an opportunity to learn from him and under him, Hall of Fame coach. His career record and everything that he's done in the game obviously speaks for itself. But just tell me a little bit about some of the things that you learned from either watching him or that you learned in conversation with him directly and the impact that he had on you during the time that you were able to work with him?
Yeah, just how important people are. You know, every once in a while, he would bring up the saying, "It's not about me." And I've been really blessed to get pretty close with Dunph. Everyone feels like they're pretty close with Dunph, so I might just be saying that. Like, his friends reach out to me. I talk to his friends on a weekly basis, like his friends from his hometown that he goes golfing with, and I mean, he's just a different person. So I went out to dinner with one of his friends a week before I left LaSalle, and we sat there and talked for about 2 hours. And him and his friend George came to every single one of our practices our year at LaSalle together. And George would bring about 100 to 200 Philly Pretzel Factory pretzels every single day. He completely overdid it, but super blessed. Like, he ended up falling down the stairs this last year, so he couldn't come to our practices. Like, I'd continue inviting him out. And he's like, "Here, just take my card, get pretzels." I'd do it once a week. I'd bring by pretzels. But he calls me last week, and he's like, "Nick, I have a question for you." I'm like, "Okay. Can you get me in contact with President Allen's secretary, the president of the university, Dan Allen's secretary?" I'm like, "Of course." Beth came to she's come to a lot of our games on the road. Like, she's a really good girl. Like, I'll set it up. He's like, "I want to do something for Dunph. He wants nothing to do with this. I want to interview people that he might have had an impact on in their career and see why he's such a different and special human being." And Dunph's like, "I don't want to do that." And his wife Ree's like, "You should do that. That's a good idea, George." But that just like shows like it's not about him. And if other people want to talk about him, he's like, "No." So I went to the Phillies game a couple days later with him, and I brought it up to him. He's like, "Yeah, I hate that. I would never do that." If someone wanted to write a book about me a couple years ago, I'm like, "I don't want to do it. I'm still going to do it." And after a week, they quit. They're like, "You're the most uncooperative person about talking about yourself that I've ever figured out." But everyone loves him. That's the thing. Like, it's not about him. He makes it about other people. Like I mentioned, he's everyone's best friend. We go to this Phillies game, and we're eating dinner. This spot I've never seen at a baseball stadium. It's like for friends and family. It's like sit-down restaurant. We had a bone-in fish. It was absolutely insane for a Tuesday A's against Phillies game to sit there. But we sit there, and Scott Faransky, who does radio, comes up and talks to him. We walk in the concourse. People are stopping him. Dunph, can I take a picture? Blah, blah, blah. And he's just, he does it. He talks to them for a couple minutes. Then he goes and he talks like the usher. Where'd you go to high school? Dan Baker, the PA announcer, stops him in the hallway. He has to rush because he goes from down on the, I don't know why he does this. He goes down from the field and he announces the lineups, and then he goes up before the first batter. Like, absolutely insane work for him to do. But he stopped and he talked in between that. Gets stopped by the guy that does the pre and post game show in the concourse. Just everyone in the city of Philadelphia knows Fran Dunphy. He has an impact on anyone that you talk about, that you've talked to in their life, for the good. Like, anyone you ever talk to who's run across Fran Dunphy, it'd be really, really hard to find someone say a bad word about him, just because he makes it about other people, not himself. And maybe it's not always about basketball. Like, he's not the greatest X's and O's mind. He knows that. He's not the greatest X's and O's mind. But he's always made it about other people, and that's what's made him such a winner in his career, because he's able to get the best out of different people. Like, this past year, I've learned so much out of Darris Nichols and everyone else on just sets, defenses. But I don't know if I really had that through my first year with Fran Dunphy. It was just more like, hey, you should get to know people's names when you talk to them. Like, address them by their names. Stuff like that makes a difference. So just being around him every day, I still talk to him pretty much every single day. It's like a dream come true. You know, he broke my heart when I was a little kid. The 2008-9 final, the A10 tournament, they beat Duquesne, the furthest they got before this little run these last couple of years. But yeah, I'm super blessed. There's no one like Fran Dunphy, and he treats every person like the salt of the earth.
He was awesome when he came on the podcast with me. And just, again, I remember coming away from that conversation with the exact feeling that you just described, in that it's kind of ironic in a sense of, here's somebody who's so willing to talk to everyone, right? And to make an impact and to make every person feel heard, feel valued. It's one of those things that, right, that's what gives you charisma, is the person who I can have a conversation with you, Nick, and we could be in a crowded room and you think that I'm making you feel like you're the only person in the room that matters. I'm not talking to you and looking at, okay, where's my next conversation coming from? And I get the sense from your description and just from what I've heard and read and my own experience with Coach Dunphy, that that's sort of the way he operates. But the irony is that you do that with all those people, and then somebody wants to write a book and talk about that impact, and then you're like, yeah, no, that's not really what I want. But I think those two things, as strange as it sounds, those two things kind of go hand in hand, right? It's the humility to be willing to have a conversation and to help someone like even Nick Lorensen, right? Like, you're a young guy just trying to get into the business. Fran Dunphy's a Hall of Famer, a guy who's had a tremendous amount of success in his career. It'd be very easy for him to just be like, oh, there's Nick, whatever. Versus, hey, now here's a guy who's probably for the rest of your career going to be a mentor that's going to help you throughout your career, somebody that you talk to on a daily basis. That speaks a lot about who he is as a person. And I think it goes back to the question that I asked you of, what do you remember about your first interactions with him? What do you take away from him? And man, what a great lesson to be able to take away from someone, not just as a basketball coach, but just as a human being, right? That, hey, I stop and I talk to the usher, I talk to the PA guy, I talk to this person, I give my time to the president's secretary, whoever it is, right? I'm willing to be able to give of my time and to give that person my full attention. And look, if we could all learn that lesson from this conversation through Fran Dunphy, that probably exponentially accelerate the value of this podcast, even after I've done it for 8 years. If everybody just got that lesson, man, we'd be doing something, Nick.
And it always starts with one question. And if this first question came across when I was interviewing Keith Dambrot, when I was doing the social media stuff, it always starts with, where'd you go to high school? These older coaches, they've been everywhere. Especially, I mean, Dump's lived in Philly his whole life. So, like, you go to a Phillies game, he's obviously going to know the high school. But it always starts with that question. And this guy, this guy, this guy. It's all relationships.
Right. That's hilarious. It really is funny when you think about, again, just the longer you've been in the business, the more connections you make. And now, when Dunphy started, obviously social media wasn't a thing, right? You were actually physically shaking somebody's hand and looking them in the eye and meeting them that way. And now you take that and you can almost put it on steroids with social media. It's so easy to be able to meet and build the relationships like we talked about earlier. And so I think, as you said, the basketball coaching world is a relationship business first. And in order to be able to build those relationships, you have to be doing a great job at what you do. But being able to build those relationships is critical to that happening. That leads to a transition, right, from Coach Dunphy to Coach Nichols, who we've also been able to have on the podcast. So I've had both your head coaches at LaSalle on the pod. So that's very cool. And just talk a little bit about what it's like as a person who is working on the staff and you're underneath one person. And a lot of times, right, coaching staffs completely turn over when a head coach goes out the door. So just talk a little bit about the transition, what it was like for you personally, and then what it's like now working under Coach Nichols.
Yeah, I mean, I was super blessed. It keeps going back to social media. Like, I knew Darris Nichols through social media because I'd watch Radford games. We would talk about him. His two assistants, his brother Shane and James Herring, that he brought along with him from Radford, we had really close relationships. Like, their conference tournament would be in Charlotte, and they'd be the first people I'd seek out. I'd go and I'd talk to them, and we'd sit courtside before a game, and we would chop it up. So we had a little bit of a relationship there, which made it really, really nice. That was maybe someone that that I knew a little bit. I knew that he was a defensive-minded coach. I knew that he played for Bobby Huggins. Like, I knew that was the way he was going to roll. He was going to be a little bit different than Dumph, but in a good way. Like, I've really enjoyed working under him the last year. I mentioned a little bit earlier, like, my X's and O's have grown exponentially, probably times 1,000 under him. We added so many sets throughout the year. We played like 7 defenses. But the way they have a relationship with everyone on the team is just different and special, and something I'll probably bring with me the rest of my career. So they made it pretty much mandatory to come to the office and chop it up with everyone. So, like, we'll have players in the office come 30 minutes, hour and a half, and we're just going back and forth. And I think that was a big reason why Rob Dockery ended up returning, averaged like 15, 16 points in A-10 play. And in the world of the transfer portal, obviously, everyone's open game. I was on this, the last podcast I was on before here was with 2 alumni of the university. We were talking about the NCAA tournament. I was just spitting the ball about the mid-major teams. And I go on my phone, and I'm like, Rob Dockery enters the transfer portal? We already said he's coming back. Like, I didn't know this was happening. And our athletic director was texting me about something else, and I texted him, like, Rob entered the transfer portal? He's like, yeah, I have no clue about this, and no one on staff has any clue about this. And then I'm home covering the NCAA tournament in D.C., and I come back in the office on Monday, and Rob walks in like nothing. Like, Rob comes over, Nick, what's up? Daps me up. I'm good. Whatever. He goes to the back of the office. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? Like, he has like a normal relationship with everyone. And then Shane Nicholas comes back. I'm like, what's Rob doing up here after he just entered the transfer portal? He's like, he's coming back. And I don't think he would have come back if it wasn't for those relationships and the trust that he had. He was at Texas A&M for 2 years. He barely played. He got, I believe, hurt the first year. The second year ended up leaving pretty early. And he really struggled in conference play or non-conference play with us. And he was turning the ball over. He's top 40 in the country in turning the ball over. Really, really poor assist to turnover ratio. And then he started listening. He was going downhill. And he took off in conference play. And that was because he trusted. It took him a couple months to trust what we were giving him. And he trusted it. And he comes in the office every single day. He talks to everyone in our office. He goes down to the academics office, talks to everyone in that office forever. He had a really good relationship with our past AD. Everyone loves Doc, and I don't think he would have been that outgoing if it wasn't for our staff and their willingness to have everyone in the office every single day. A lot of coaches really say it's a player-first program, and I think at LaSalle it really is. Because just, you can have a real relationship outside of basketball with these guys. And that means a lot because you're in basketball so much during the season. In the off season, it's all you can think about. For you to come up and able to talk about the Steeler game or the Raven game. And, I'm a Steeler fan, as you can see behind me. And Josiah Harris, who played with them for a couple of years, is a Ravens fan from Wilmington, Delaware. I don't understand that. But, we would just, they would egg us on in the group chats like butt heads when the Ravens will lose or when the Steelers will lose or when they were playing each other. So just to be able to have the relationship outside of basketball during the basketball season with these guys, have them in the office, talk about different things is different. As we've said a million times, it's all about relationships really in college basketball. You can be the greatest X's and O's mind, but to really succeed in this business, you need to have a good relationship with good people.
Do you think that, and again, you don't maybe have as much to compare it to as somebody who's been in the business longer, but just when I think about the portal and the situation of where it is now, where not only in the past, staffs had to spend a lot of time recruiting new players. Now you're spending a lot of your time recruiting your guys who are already on your roster and making sure that they're happy, that they're comfortable, that they want to come back and play again for your team. So do you think that the conversations that you just described, right, daily, getting guys coming in the office and sitting down and talking, how much of what you guys do on that front is intentional to be able to help to keep and retain guys on the roster? What are the conversations that you guys have as a staff about, forget about recruiting new guys out of the portal or high school kids or whatever, but just retaining your own players. What do those conversations sound like in the coach's office?
Yeah, nothing is guaranteed. Everyone's on a 1-year deal, and we know that. Like, if you want to have someone back, like, you can't mess it up. Like, own up to your mistakes if you didn't sub correctly. You keep in conversation with them. Ask them what they like, what they want to do different. Like, Jaden Johnson's returning for LaSalle. He was a great leader. He didn't play in the non-conference because he had a foot issue, and then he came to conference play, and our assisted turnovers went through the roof. And we started playing really good passing offense. Noah Collier. But the thing with Jaden Johnson, going back to that, is like they had a relationship out of high school. He committed to ODU over them. And then when he entered the transfer portal, he's like, I want to come here. Like, I know that this staff's going to like have a good relationship with me. Let me do what I want to do. Like, I like these guys. Noah Collier was at Pitt, then he was at William and Mary, and then he was at LaSalle. Like, he came into LaSalle where, like, there's probably zero chance you're going to play in non-conference because he tore his ACL at William and Mary in February, and he ended up playing in November. And he maybe put too much. He did put too much of a load on his ACL, and he ended up playing the rest of the year. But he trusted the staff enough because we had consistent talks about him. Like, hey, when you come back next year, like, you're going to be the starting 5. We know what you can bring to a program because we saw it in year 2 of William and Mary and how well you did in under a new scheme, and that was able to get him back. Bowen Beatty, like, he's just the ultimate people person. He's coming back to LaSalle, maybe not because of basketball, but because of what he can bring to the team. Just like his constant leadership, constant enthusiasm, constant happiness. Like, he's Big Bird. That's what we kind of call him around the office. He's Big Bird. He's a 7-footer from Australia. He's just a super jolly and happy guy to be around. Like, he owns up to his mistakes if he makes them. But it's just, you got to recruit these guys every day. It's every single day. You got to own up to your mistakes. Everyone's on a 1-year deal in the transfer portal. I mentioned a little bit earlier when I watch all these games, like, I keep a running list of players I like. And I just assume that they're all going to enter the transfer portal because that's what we're at right now. It's like 70% of the guys are entering the transfer portal. So I'm like, this guy's probably going to enter. Let me put this on this list, and then I'll send them to someone. Like, a couple weeks later, they're like, is he in the transfer portal? I'm like, probably not, but, like, I'd assume he will be.
It's so crazy, honestly, when you think about just the way that college basketball has changed over the last 5 years, both in terms of the portal and in terms of NIL, and the number of guys that, A, go into the portal, and then B, just the way that's impacted every staff's recruiting, right? You're the first place, 95% of the programs in the country, the first place they're going to go and recruit is recruit out of the portal, which, again, makes sense. If you can find a guy who's already been to college, gone through that adjustment, somebody who's been productive at the college level versus taking a chance on a high school kid who you don't know socially, academically, athletically, whether or not that kid's going to be able to do what they need to do in order to have success, versus a guy who's already went through that whole process as a college player. It completely makes sense. But like we talked about, it also completely changes the way that you have to operate on a year-to-year basis, building the relationship much quicker, right? The relationship doesn't build anymore over 4 years. Now, it still occasionally can, but you have to get to that relationship, the depth of it, much quicker, because you may only have that guy for a season, or at least you only have one season to make an impression on that guy in order to keep him around and keep him in your program. And that's certainly, I think, a challenge. Talk a little bit about the NIL situation at LaSalle and how you guys approach that. And just in terms of how much of the recruiting, I know I've talked to a couple coaches that have told me that one of the things that they don't like about the recruiting process the way it is now, whether it's out of the portal or whether it's out of high school, that a lot of times it just does come down to, hey, I got 5 schools interested in me. Which one of those schools is offering me the most money? And my relationship with the coach or my potential role on the team sometimes just becomes secondary to the bottom line dollar figure. But just tell me a little bit about how you guys handle the NIL situation at LaSalle.
Yeah, it's really tough to see it happen, and it does happen a lot where people just choose money over spots, and it happens a lot with the mid-major guys when they go to high majors. They just want that high major clout. Like, hey, I'm at South Carolina. Like, I'd rather be the 15th guy at South Carolina than an everyday starter at VCU. But heading into the first year under Darris, it was really tough. We had double. So Fordham had double the money that we had, and Fordham was the next worst team in the whole NIL of the A10. So it was really tough. We were just putting things together, and it's even more tough because you had to put together a whole new roster. We only had one player returning. So I mean that was tough. And Safek Castrat's done an outstanding job this last year, really fundraising every single day, getting that money up. Now we're still worse than the A10, but our figure's over $1 million now, which makes us able to compete with teams in the league. We're actually more than just a MAC program now in that landscape, because a lot of times we would be competing with teams in the 2A MAC because that's what the money we had. But I feel like now we have a full A10 roster, and I mean, Safet's done an outstanding job this last year. I just want to keep drilling that in, like just going out every single day, going to lunch, getting coffee with these guys, building up these relationships so you can have more money. Like, obviously, I'm not a huge fan of like paying these guys thousands of dollars for 1 year. The money's just going to completely disappear after that. Like, what's the point of having 1 year commitments to these programs, giving them all this money when they're not going to stick around? But the NIL has been elevated. It's probably going to continue to elevate, which is just crazy to think that these rosters, they're spending millions of dollars on these rosters for 1 year and like 15 wins. Because everyone in the A10 spending over $1 million on their roster, there's going to be 4 teams that still play in the pillow fight every year. It's just an insane commitment to college basketball and college football that you're giving away all this money for your university. And we're seeing a lot of programs either drop down a level or two, or there's been talks of some teams or some programs even just dropping all sports. It's an insane landscape right now, but Safet's done a great job really elevating our NIL, even though we're still worse than the A10 because there's just some teams like VCU and Dayton that are just otherworldly.
Tough. And I just look at it from the outside, and I always just wonder if it's sustainable. And I think your point about the 1 year thing with the money, and where does that money then go? What does it really bring to the university when it's a guy on a 1 year deal? And you think about asking alumni for a contribution, right? And in the past, if you came to your alums and said, hey, we want to build a new practice facility, or hey, we want to upgrade the locker room, or hey, we want to get 2 new shooting machines, or hey, we want to get 3 new sets of alternate uniforms, can you give us a donation? Well, now, right, I make that donation and I know that, hey, it contributed to the new practice facility, or it contributed to the locker room rebuild. And there's sort of a lasting, tangible thing that I can see that my money went to. Whereas now it's like, well, what did your money go to? Well, it went to pay this 18-year-old high school kid who was there for a year and was the 11th man on the team and scored 27 points over the course of the entire season. It doesn't have the same feel. And to your point, I just wonder, where are we? Where's the end point for how this all shakes out? And I think the honest truth is none of us have any idea where this thing is going to eventually settle. Where does it completely disrupt the whole landscape of college sports, and we have whatever the top 30 or 40 schools that go and do completely their own thing, and then everybody else kind of reorganizes below that? Do we continue to stay in the same system we have, and the money sort of finds an equilibrium where players can still get paid, but it's not the ridiculous sums that we're talking about now? And I always say that it feels like to me that managing that as a coaching staff, right, it's already difficult enough to manage personalities and manage playing time and the chemistry that goes along with all those things. And now you throw the money piece of it on top of it with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who Some of them are mature enough to handle that stuff. I'm sure there are some of them that have a hard time
Mhm.
handling that kind of money. And then you think about what money does with families and people who have influence outside of the player themselves, and you're trying to figure all that out. I can't even imagine being in a locker room on a coaching staff trying to navigate all that in addition to trying to coach your team and help guys get better and help your team win. It's a complicated business. And so I think that's one of those things that coaches are still trying to figure out. Hey, what does that look like as the landscape continues to kind of shift under your feet and you're really trying to figure it out? Let me just ask you about your role day to day as a GA at LaSalle. What are some of the tasks that you have on a daily basis? What are the things that you get to do that you like to do as part of your role there at LaSalle?
A lot of it was video stuff. I really enjoy doing that every day, picking apart film, helping coaches out with scouts. It was something I've done ever since I was at Queens, really, just watching film and helping them pick it apart and doing that every day. I didn't do much of it my first year under Fran Dunphy, but Darris came in. He's like, we've always liked to have a GA do the video stuff, and I was able to do that. And I just had so much fun. I learned so much being able to do that this last year. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of operations stuff. Small staff, obviously the biggest program at the university. So we have a lot on our plate and a lot of people to please throughout. So, you go around campus and be able to talk to people about different things about the program, try to help us out, book flights, put together gear, get food every single day, all that jazz. Because we didn't have the biggest manager crew either. So, we didn't make them come every single day. So it was really doing operations every day. It was Mike Doyle, who's now the head coach at Delaware Valley, Brody Dempsey, who was the other GA, and myself. So it was a really, really small little group that was doing a lot of stuff every single day to help the program continue to be the best that it can be.
That's what it's all about, right? That's what we talked about earlier, that whatever it is that your role is, do it to the best of your ability. And that's how you end up, helping yourself to have success in the place where you're at, helping your team and your program and your head coach have success. And then that's ultimately what gets you the opportunity to get the next chance to get a job and advance in your career. And that's really what it's all about. Before we get out, Nick, I want to ask you a final two-part question.
Got it.
Part one, when you look ahead over the next year or two, what do you see as being your biggest challenge? And then the second part of the question, when you think about what you get to do every day as a college basketball coach, what brings you the most joy? So your biggest challenge and then your biggest joy.
So I'm in my biggest challenge right now, finishing my graduate degree, trying to find a new spot to be at. I think that's the biggest challenge, just trying to navigate this whole coaching cycle right now, figuring out what jobs are open, where I can be, who I can reach out to help me get these jobs, if it's feasible to get these jobs with, I wasn't a player, so I got to pay for all these loans and all that jazz. And my biggest joy is just seeing the athletes every single day, grow and become better human beings. It's not, to me, it's never really been about basketball. I love basketball. I love sports, sports my whole life. I can always say that, I'm going to hop off of here. I'm going to watch the Pirates play at 12:30. But just seeing young men grow every single day, hopefully becoming better human beings, that means more than anything to me. I don't care if you're going on to really be a professional basketball player. I just want to see you be a good human being, good to your family, good to women, good to everyone. Biggest joy in life is seeing other people grow to become better human beings.
It's well said. And it's a theme that I've come back to over and over on the podcast. I always say that the opportunity to use basketball as the vehicle to be able to have an impact on people's lives. I love the game of basketball. I can tell from our conversation you feel the same way. And to be able to utilize that in such a way that can do what you just described, right? To make somebody a better human being. That's really what coaching is all about. Sure, it's about wins and losses. Sure, it's about developing them as basketball players. But ultimately, 20 years from now, developing them as people is what it's really all about. There has never been anyone set up better to answer this last question than you in terms of our setup of this whole entire conversation. So the last thing is always, how can people reach out to you? How can people get in touch with you? How can people connect with you? And I always say share social media, share email, website, whatever you feel comfortable with. And inevitably, there's always, I'd say, like 50% of the coaches are like, I don't remember what my Twitter is. And I'm always like, don't worry, we'll get it in the show notes. I have extreme confidence, Nick, that you will have every one of your things lined up of how people can reach out with you. So go ahead.
Yeah, you can always reach out to me on Twitter. Give me a follow, send me a DM at N Lorensen Sports, NLORENSEN Sports. My Instagram's always open too. Just my name, Nick Lorensen, NICKLORENSEN. And my email, if we want to do that too, is my last name, Lorensen, Nick. So there's 2 N's there in the middle, one for the N at the end of my last name, one at the beginning of my name at yahoo.com. But yeah, I'm always open to answering any questions. I just love college basketball. I love mid-major basketball. So I'm always down to talk about basketball too, if you need someone to talk to. And baseball. You know, I watch so many different teams for so many different people in the business. That's how I keep in contact with people in the off season. Hey, this is how the Giants did. This is how the Orioles did today. So anything anyone needs, you know, I'm always free to talk. So reach out in one of those 3 areas and I'm all game.
Awesome. Kudos to you for still following baseball. It's one of those things that when I was a kid, I could still name for you probably the starting lineup of the 1979 Baltimore Orioles. But if you ask me to name a player on the Arizona Diamondbacks today, I'm not sure I could do it. So kudos to you for continuing your baseball fandom. But to the rest of everybody out there in our audience, we really appreciate you listening. Nick, we thank you for your time today, jumping on. Really been a lot of fun to have this conversation. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks. Your first impression is everything when applying for a new coaching job. A professional coaching portfolio is the tool that highlights your coaching achievements and philosophies, and most of all, helps separate you and your abilities from the other applicants. The Coaching Portfolio Guide is an instructional membership-based website that helps you develop a personalized portfolio. Each section of the Portfolio Guide provides detailed instructions on how to organize your portfolio in a professional manner. The guide also provides sample documents for each section of your portfolio that you can copy, modify, and add to your personal portfolio. As a Hoopheads Pod listener, you can get your Coaching Portfolio Guide for just $25. Visit coachingportfolioguide.com/hoopheads to learn more.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, presented by Head Start Basketball.